Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.
Welcome to Sunday Sitting with Sisters, y'all. We're back. Happy New Year. This is my first interview of the year, and I'm doing this with dear sister Javon Muhammad. Dear sister, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
You look fantastic.
I feel fantastic.
So I wanted you to be my first interview because I think you're amazing. You do amazing work. If you don't know who Sister Javon Muhammad is, you need to look her up. If you Google her, a whole bunch of stuff will come up. I always think of you as a doer. There are people who are talkers. There are people who are visionaries or talk about visions. And then there are people who do that and they do the work of the vision. And that is you. So I know that you are a mother, you're a grandmother, you're CEO, you had Sister Girl, your food brand, you had the Urban Midwifery, you're author, business owner, CEO, midwife, coach, kick the butt, get it done. You do all of that, Javon. And I have to ask you, when I know I threw out a lot of titles, but what is the core of your motivation to do any of this stuff or all of this stuff that you've done so far? What has been the core motivation for you?
Well, first I want to say that's just so funny. Like to think back and all of those things, it's just like survival and living and giving. And I want to say all praises due to Allah because I feel blessed, and all of those things. I don't feel like any of those things. That's so funny. I just feel like a person who has been on a journey. And in that journey, I think at the core of everything that I've done, it's just been to try to just be free, and not only myself, but to help other people feel free along the way. I think that's something that sometimes in some of our communities we struggle with. Like, I came out of to do all of those things that you just mentioned. I came out of a lot, and I think in the fight to overcome what was my reality growing up, I created a lot. And so it's a blessing. So it really has just been response to not wanting to experience what I experienced as a child, and also not wanting other people to experience that. Like when, in becoming a midwife, one of the things I loved about being a midwife and doing the work as a midwife is that I felt like I got to save myself every day. So I was a teen mom, but I got to reach back and work with other teen moms and try to do everything I could to prevent them from learning by bumping their head like I did, because I had an upbringing where, I was just out there. out there a lot of the times, and I bumped my head a lot of the times. And I wanted, it's always been my dream to make sure that Black women get their love story.
Mm.
Like, just period. Just whether, as a teenager, if you out there in these streets, if you're an adult, like I want to see Black girls and women get their love story. And I think we all hold it in our heart. And the cards don't fall as we think they will, so we start to settle for things. And I just always want to bring that softness and that desire back into my work. And so I think that was one of the major influences on my path. It's just, okay, well, maybe if I do this, we'll feel better about it. We'll be freer if we do this. We'll be, how do we create community? It's just, how do we create community where we feel loved, or where we feel like we have a place, and not in that way like women have a place, but where we have a place, we're in our community, and we're thriving like other people, or like we think other people are. Like that. I feel like when I talk to so many of us, we're like, this is what we want. If we could just get this, we would be fine. Well, how do we just get in a place where we're free in our mind, and we understand we can do it? And I know that's a lot, but that like literally, that's been my journey. Like, if I do this, I can create jobs, and people, will feel like this, or we'll have more opportunity, or we'll have more love, or we'll have more business. Just in wanting at the root for us to have the same access, freedom, and love, freedom, justice, and equality.
Right on, right on. Javon, so I know you were a teen mother, right? How did you get to the midwifery?
Ooh, again, just a journey of bumping my head. So, um, girl, I had, I was a mom telling me the one thing they could tell me is how I could go get some benefits. So at the core of my journey, it started from not wanting to be on welfare. I went and I signed up, to receive benefits, and I'll never forget receiving that first check. And I just turned 50 this year, right? So this is a long time. This is when you used to get 2 checks on AFDC. So I got that first check, and that check was like 200 and something dollars. And I remember thinking, how do people do this? Like, how am I going to be able to do anything with this money? And so I went and I enrolled in medical assisting school immediately. Like, I was like, oh, hell no, I'm going to get a job. So I got a job. I graduated from medical assisting school, and I got a job. And I learned that I was really attracted to obstetrics. I wanted to work for an OBGYN. And again, I had, this complicated childhood, and I had many reasons why I would love to work with young people. And so when I was working in the OBGYN office, I just thrived at it. I loved it. And I was so helpful and so eager to learn that one of the doctors referred me to Kaiser Hospital to work as an OB tech in L&D. So I went and I did that. And again, I was in heaven. I was so excited about it. I loved it. I loved, being a part of women's labors and birth, and talking to them, just all of it. So one day when I was working, because I'm a worker, so I found out that one day they asked me to work graveyard shift. I worked day, and I did it, and I found out that the nurses on graveyard shift, I don't know if lazy is the right word, but I knew they didn't want to leave the nursing station. So I responded to everything. Can you go in room 2 and do this? Can you go? So I befriended all of the resident doctors. Kaiser, this site is a teaching hospital. I befriended all of them so that everything they needed, I was in there. We suturing, I'm suturing. We doing this, I'm doing this. And so one of the doctors looked at me after a birth and said, "You are a midwife." And I was like, "I am?" She said, "You are a midwife. Go look it up." And I went and looked it up. And from that moment, I was like, I am a midwife. Man, I was all, I ate, slept, I drank midwifery. And so, it was the fulfillment of all of these voids. I feel like all of these things I wanted to share, this work that I wanted to do, it was all wrapped up in midwifery. And so I still had a journey. Of course, it takes a minute to be a midwife. And so along the way, I became not only, working in L&D at Kaiser, but I became a foster parent. I was really young, so young that the city didn't want to allow me. The city and county of San Francisco didn't really want to allow me per se to be a foster parent because I was in my early 20s and very close to the population I wanted to take care of, which was pregnant girls and new moms who were teens still in the foster care system. And so they gave me, like, I think I had 2 extra psychological tests, but I did it all. I became a foster parent. And while I was going on my midwifery journey, I was taking care of pregnant teens. I was also newly married and I was having babies. So we were having babies together and I had so much to share, and it really enriched my journey toward midwifery. I was one of only 2 homes licensed in San Francisco that wanted to even, be bothered with pregnant teens and new moms. So my house was always full, always.
Wow. So Jay, so hold on. In this moment, I want to play a video, and then I want to come back and talk to you about this video, because you have so much. So, I can't hit everything like I want to, but I watched this video. I felt like this is the Javon I met for the first time, and because it's like you're a midwife, but you also have a way of talking about community and do for self and wellness. You have a way of doing that with us. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes when you're talking about healthcare with us, sometimes people don't know how to. They don't really know how to say that to us sometimes. You know what I mean? So let me just play this video.
I know this video.
So Jay, how do you feel seeing that video?
Well, a lot of different ways. First of all, the birthing project for me was amazing. It's one of my favorite experiences on this journey. I thought that the work was great. It was such an honor to just get to come into a clinic that had been established already to do the work that I wanted to do. It was like maybe the first time that something fit that well, that I didn't create, but, that I got to benefit from. So the birthing project was amazing. In that video, one of the things that also stands out to me is the last picture is my daughter. And so I am a grandmother of 5 and soon to be 6, God willing, grandchildren. And I've caught 4 of those 5. And so, just reminds me of doing the early work. This is when my daughter was first having her first baby, who's now 10. And so that part feels very good. And it just also feels great to know, man, I was immersed in the work and surrounded with the population that I wanted to serve. And so everything felt very natural. It work just wasn't work. I was really excited about coming and working with, my younger sisters and making sure that, again, they, we did the mechanical work of midwifery, but we also did what we could to make sure that they were supported and that they were getting their love story.
So what motivated you to write your books? Where does
working
the
at
book
the
come from?
birthing project. And so really the motivation, so my first book, Baby Mamas, that really is a workbook. It's not like deep reading. You're not gonna, discover anything. What it was is me trying to find a way to get my ladies to open up, because I have been through the same thing they've been through. Like, oh my gosh, if they don't want to peel back these layers on me. And so I could size them up and be in a room and know exactly what's happening. But the real work won't start until they trust me enough to tell me what's happening. I know, but I need you to tell me, or I need you to trust me enough to allow me to say some things that you're not going to really feel comfortable with, or that you're going to, we tend, what we're afraid to change. We tend to stay away from. So I need you to let me fully in. And so Baby Mamas is a workbook that they go through to, first of all, demonstrate that I've been through what they're going through. And second of all, to have a few activities so that when they come in, we get to the root of what we really need to talk about. And it really is, so it's like, I don't know, it's very few pages, and it's written at a third grade level. And so when we get in there, it's really like, two homegirls talking. Like, instead of me having to say, I know exactly what's happening, I give them ways to tell me so that I can be a part of the conversation instead of doing this, because that's what they getting everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you pregnant, or you pregnant again. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Or I knew you was going to be pregnant. Or they've been out. One of the things about the birthing project is that we worked with a lot of young people who had been ran away from foster care, or been out in the streets in certain sex worker positions. So there were so many different scenarios that I came across, and I wanted to make sure that I addressed each one of them with the respect and concern that should be there. And so that's what it was, really a workbook. The second one, The Birds and the Bees, it was just to help mothers have a conversation with their daughters that was a little bit more scripted, so that, because they would be really confused. One of the things I know is that many mothers would come in and try to explain to me how all of the negative things, the things they saw negative in their mind, it wasn't their daughters. And I would try to tell them, baby, it's your daughter. You know what I mean? It's all of our daughters. That's why you didn't escape. And so, certain um, laws that are horrible, nefarious laws that affect, our community different than they affect other communities, that empower 12-year-olds to be out there on the streets receiving birth control, and doing a lot of, that's your daughter, because they all know, the 12-year-olds all know the law better than we do. And so I wrote this book with that in mind. Like, maybe if you go through this book, it'll help you to touch on some of the things that you should be touching on right now.
Mm-hmm. Javon, tell me, what is urban midwifery?
So Urban Midwifery is a nonprofit that I started years ago, and it was to make sure that all of us had access to home birth. Like, even, one of the most difficult parts of being a young Black midwife, when I started, things are changing. They're not where they should be, but things are changing. Is that midwives doing home birth could not accept Medi-Cal. And a lot of the people I wanted to work with, they had Medi-Cal. And so I didn't want them having Medi-Cal to mean they couldn't have a home birth. And so it's a nonprofit where I work with other midwives who would agree to provide discounted services or free services, so that we could make sure in partnership that all of our community also had access to home birth.
Okay. What about your baby food?
Okay, so that's Sister Girl. So again, so many great things for me happened because of the birthing project. And I'll say that because the thought came to me when I was at the birthing project, because I would hear so many things about how we were feeding our babies, and about organic foods. And I sat and I thought a long time about how we could provide, one, a healthier product that was easy for our babies. Something that you just pick up the bottle, it's organic. It's not like you made it at home, but it's the next best thing, to feed our babies. Also, making sure that the packaging was reflective
Mhm.
of you know, a non-white person, because my goal was to make a variety of different sister girls, but I'm still stuck on one. But so, and Sister Girl had a story, like, right, I haven't achieved this yet, but it's something that maybe I'll do. Maybe I'll get a young person to do now. But Sister Girl was meant to be a teaching character. And
Mm.
so we wanted to do like a VH1 BET type series that would um every episode would be funny and it would also teach. And so I wrote a whole first series for my Sister Girl character. And Sister Girl was so real. Her name was Sister Girl because Sister Girl, grew up in the projects. Sister Girl was facing some stuff, but Sister Girl managed to have a home birth. Sister Girl breastfed her baby. Sister Girl, she grew. And she also grew married. Like she married the father of her child, but it was a journey. Like the series is a journey, but it was a real life journey based on all stories that I heard or stories that were mine.
Mm.
And that I felt like could take us to that next spot. Because one of the things that I learned, and this is just throughout my career, is that people assume that Black women don't want something or the Black community doesn't want something, but the real truth is we just haven't had exposure to it. We want
Mm.
it, but you have to feel that we're worthy enough to expose us to that. And one of my greatest lessons in that was at Moran City Health and Wellness Center when we opened the birth center, right? And it was, people would say, Black women not gonna come in there and have their baby in the birth center because they want medicine. This is other Black women as well. We want medicine. We ain't gonna have our baby in no tub, but right, we watching Birth Story the same way every other woman is watching it. We want to feel like we think they feel with that tub. Like we want
Mhm.
to feel what it feels like that midwife. So I know that. Like I knew that. And we created that birth center, and it was full of Black women on Medi-Cal because they want the same thing, but nobody exposed them to it. And so Sister Girl was all about that. I'm gonna start from where we at, and when I say where we're at, I'm talking about my target
Right
population,
on.
right?
Right
Because
on.
I'm trying to work with where the people from where I came from, and it wasn't a pretty picture. So I'm gonna start from where we at, but we gonna get to the other side because we want it, but somebody have to feel like we worthy enough to have it, to offer it to us. The same situation when we look at the environment. People assume that, a lot of people assume that Black people, we're not environmentalists. So they don't put
Mhm.
things that we would benefit from in our community, or they don't reach out to us when there are environmental things happening. But when I was in Louisiana, I made it a point to make sure that we did a lot of partnerships with environmental groups because we want the best for our community as well, but you don't sometimes think we're worthy enough or to deserve it or that we would even want it. But if you teach us, if we get to be in the conversation, we want
Mhm.
that wellness for ourselves. We want that organization and that normalcy for ourselves as well. So that's one of my lessons. And so Sister Girl was kind of birthed out of that concept that I want to offer the best. I want to tell the story from the dirt, but when we gonna get to the other side. And like I said, Sister Girl, she went through a lot, but she had her baby at home, and the father of that baby was with her and they were breastfeeding, and she defied the odds in her community. And because of that, she gets to be a beacon of light and show other people.
Javon, is there a community of midwives like you, or are there? I know this sounds kind of like vague, but are there other Black midwives who are working in terms of trying to make sure Black women and girls have the right to have that birth story, that love story, that you know, is
All
there a
across the
community of y'all?
country. All across the country. There are amazing Black midwives all across the country. In my community, I have done work with Kiki Jordan and Asatu Hall. Like I'm talking about Asatu been around since being around. Like, you know what I mean? She's been committed to this work. But in Louisiana, I found amazing birth workers. not only midwives but doulas as well, or birth workers as well, out there trying to do this in New Orleans. But what I would say is all across the country. I mean, we got elders who've been doing the work. We got Shafia, Jenny, and we both old, and 50 old. Me and Jenny are more like peers. But Shafia, who we learned a lot from. We got Salama. We have people all across the country that have been doing this work. It's just that it's so much work and so few of us. So it may feel like, and it's true. And it is. There are not enough of us at this point in the work to make that impact that we want to make, but it's growing. Midwifery is becoming more available to people. Is the education is becoming more attainable. So I think that we'll see a shift in that in the future. But in the last 30, 40 years, it's just been us trying to make a way, trying to open the doors, trying to make, influence midwifery education to be more available to young Black women, and trying to make that the option to have the care available. Of course, we talk a lot about Black being diverse, and so everyone doesn't see the world how I see it, but they see the world. We're trying to provide midwifery care, so we may have differences in what we believe about the care, but we're growing in numbers.
Is there a history between midwifery and Black women or the Black community?
Of course, girl. Of course, we know that. So they used to be called granny midwives. We would call elder midwives from a certain period of time granny midwives. We know that they were the guardians of birth. Like, we might not pay attention a lot, but in some of the stories we'll see when they called the midwife, a Black woman coming over, or on the plantation, a Black enslaved person being the midwife, a Black enslaved person doing the breastfeeding. But we had it covered in the South. Of course, trained midwives came over with the other enslaved people, and those people used their skill, on the plantation, and they delivered the babies there, both Black and white babies. And so we come from historical roots in midwifery, especially, you'll hear many midwives say they had a calling. It was that feeling to always do that. A lot of times those midwives learned that their ancestors were midwives. And so, it was a very wicked plan that was used against us to criminalize midwifery in the early 1900s, because there was an organized effort to criminalize midwifery and take that away from us, so that the practice of obstetrics could be born, and that practice be a more white male-led practice. So we're just now, especially in the South, we're just now able to come back and be licensed in some places. I'm not sure in this moment. I know Alabama just received, just recently, just in the last couple of years, they just received the ability to be licensed again. Now, Alabama, where I'm telling you, most of the granny midwives and, would have been in this area, Mississippi, Louisiana. So, these states are just now getting the ability to have midwives licensed and deliver out of the hospital.
Now, Javon, the only reason why I asked that question is because in today's society, people think of, sometimes, some of us, not all of us, think when you hear midwives, you think of white, earthy, crunchy type of people. You think that that's something white people do. Like a lot of things we think that white people do, which really came from Black people. But, that's why I asked that question in terms of what's that connection between us when it's really us. The connection is us.
And it's because of the rebirth, the quote, rebirth of midwifery, right? Like in the 70s with Ina Mae Gaskin and, white, earthy, crunchy people kind of going down to Tennessee in the farm. And then the coming out of that, when licensing was available in many states, or in some states, the amount of money, the cost of becoming a midwife was a lot. For myself, looking at 20 years ago, I had to travel to Jamaica to get some of my numbers. I spent time on the border in El Paso. I did these things that were set up for midwives to get the birth numbers that they needed to be licensed, but that was all very costly because you had to go places and stay there. You had to pay the program, you had to leave your community. So it was really difficult for us to become midwives, especially if you were a mother. You needed somebody to watch your child for extended periods of time. Just the practice of midwifery, if you're a mother and you get called at midnight, who's going to watch your child? You have to have a system of support. And so that was a little bit more difficult for us. And that's why I say over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of work done by young folks and old folks to change the reality and the narrative and make sure that Black midwives are growing in numbers with everyone else.
Okay. Um, okay. I asked a question that's going to lead me to this next question, which is racism and birth. Um, has any of that changed? That's all right. Has anything changed at all?
Well, yes and no. Like, I think what has changed, sorry, I just want to change my ringer off. What has
Okay.
changed is that we talk about it more. And so when you tend to talk about things more, you become more, it's at the front of your mind. What scares me about that is I don't think with it being at the front of my mind that we've made the progress that we should make. And again, there are people out here doing amazing work. The first name comes to mind is Jenny Joseph and the easy access clinics and the work she did with that and the work she continues to do. And all across the country, people are particularly Black people are trying to come up with models and ways to equalize the playing field, to end the disparities, to address that. Because racism is one of the greater causes of infant and maternal mortality. So that's what we're really talking about, is why Black women have worse outcomes than other women. And it's linked to racism and not being heard. We've heard lots recently, about women not being heard there in medicine in general. And so we talk a lot about that in midwifery. I think that we have to have more of us delivering birth. I just was sent an article a couple months ago that proved through research that Black women do better when they have Black providers. Their outcomes are better. And so, one of the only answers is to have more of us doing the care, but also us making sure that we're connected to community, that we don't become midwives and OBGYNs and then get disconnected from our community or what that means or ground. Like one of the things that I love about community midwifery, and I'm going to call licensed midwives and certified professional midwives community midwives in this instance. These are the midwives that go to school to work outside of the hospital, and part of the curriculum is apprenticeship. So we're apprenticing with an elder midwife or just a more experienced midwife in our community, and we're learning how to do the work on the ground. I think this model is the best model when we look at our community, because that's the kind of people we come from, a culture where we're very verbal, we're very community oriented versus individual. And so when you look at the community midwife, if I'm your midwife, I'm going to come to your house. I'm going to do the visits at your house. I'm going to meet your mother. I'm going to meet your partner. I'm going to meet, I want to be a part of your family. I want to get to know you. I want to build trust. So that when when you get ready to deliver your baby or have your baby, I'm a part of it. We're together. I'm support. I'm support. There's trust. But I know you now. Like I can look in your cupboards. You know what I mean? We could talk about some things we wouldn't have talked about. I came to your house. I made a mental note about something that I want to talk to you later about, or I talked about it then, or you know what I mean? I've become a part of your experience. But after that, in 24 hours, I'm back at your house. In 48 hours, I'm back at your house. I'm sharing things with you. It really is on the ground midwifery. and it keeps you in your community. And it's like working at the birthing project in the book. I get to know some things about you that would help me to help you be safer and healthier that I wouldn't have learned in the hospital. I would have grouped you with a bunch of people. You know what I mean? Like certain tests, like when we look at the application of erythromycin on the eyes, right? After when you have a baby and they put the ointment on the eyes, that practice is really to protect all babies, not the babies that need to be protected. That practice is just in case your mom had an STD and you come through. So, a vaginal infection, you come through and the eyes come into contact with it. Well, if I've been working with you the whole time, I have some extra information. Maybe we keep your baby from that. You see what I mean? So it becomes very personalized versus general. And then it becomes safer, in my opinion. But there is also data that shows that planned home birth is just as safe as a hospital birth for a low risk woman or a healthy woman.
So Jay, we gone, because you hitting on a lot of things. We're gonna jump really quick to Marin City and the work you did with Marin City. But first, I gotta start off with the video. You know how this go. So let me get the video up. Okay.
I just want to thank you so much for coming to celebrate with us our reopening in a space that is special to me and to the community. So we're really happy that you came, and we just wanted to start this evening out officially by honoring Dr. Coleman. He campaigned not only for a better service for his mainly African American patients, but also for more opportunities for young people from ethnic minorities to enter medicine.
By the 1960s, his practice had become a magnet for young, gifted African American medical specialists. Born in urban Philadelphia, Coleman went to Penn State University, largely through the determination of his mother. When he entered Penn State in 1937, he was one of only 13 Black students out of a student body of approximately 7,000.
He initially was not assigned a dorm room. Instead, the janitor let him stay in a little closet. After graduating from Howard University College of Medicine, Washington, D.C., he served an internship in St. Louis, Missouri, before being called to military service at a hospital post in Alabama. He made San Francisco his home and the rough blue-collar neighborhood of Bayview, Hunters Point his life. The area was subject of a recent film, Straight Outta Hunters Point, a social realist look at gang warfare on a tough side of the tracks.
As his practice grew, so did Coleman's ideas of how he should be treating his patients. People would often come to him with injuries that had been sustained at work. Coleman would treat the wounds, but was frustrated by the inability to help these patients navigate illegal issues. So he went back to the books, attended night school, and graduated in law from Golden Gate University in San Francisco in 1956.
Extending his practice to legal advice, offered free as he never formally practiced law, was not enough. Coleman also wanted to improve individual patient compliance. Patients needing laboratory tests or specialized treatment most often had to bust themselves all over San Francisco. Coleman wanted to bring those services to the neighborhood. In 1960, he opened a 2-story medical building with x-ray and laboratory facilities, a pharmacy, and a staff that included a surgeon, a dermatologist, an obstetrician, gynecologist, an ophthalmologist, and a dentist. The center thrived until the early 1970s, when his specialists started disappearing to more lucrative practices, and dwindling state medical reimbursements made it difficult for younger doctors to work in Hunters Point and make enough to promptly pay back student loans. He became a single-handed practitioner.
You can't watch the whole thing, but I just had to, because we just got finished talking about the history of midwifery and how it's tied to who we are as a people. And here you are in your work, you just keep, I always find that things keep reconnecting themselves. Like great people always connect themselves. So when you worked at Marin City and they had their clinic, you also went a little ways across the water into Bayview Hunters Point and reopened a medical clinic that felt like a hospital with all the stuff that was in there. What was your connection to that? And why was that important for you to reopen that building?
Okay. Well, first of all, I grew up part of my life in Hunters Point. And Dr. Coleman was my doctor when he was very old. He was my doctor. Dr. Coleman was amazing. I don't have to talk about him because we just saw the video about some of his work, but I do want to say that he worked up until his last day. He had a stethoscope that had an amplification system on it so that he could hear. Like, he was really about that life. He was doing home visits until he transitioned. And so, like, this man, his work was amazing. And so his daughter called me. She was about to lose the building. This is how we got involved. Um, Also, I had a practice in that building before with Dr. Laisha Pierce. And so I had some connection to the building, but his daughter called and said that they were about to lose the building. Well, I could not let that happen with the ability to put a satellite clinic in there. And so we first went in and put a satellite clinic in there. And then we started work to figure out how we can transform the entire building and revive his work. They did lose the building. They ended up losing the building. But what was beautiful about it is we had already secured a 20-year lease before they lost the building. And the new gentleman, who purchased the building, kind of was stuck with honoring some of our things. But one of the things that we did that I will forever be proud of is that we backdoored it and we went and we had that building declared a landmark, a San Francisco landmark. And so that building has to be used in the way that it was used in the past. And that was so important because the new owner, the person who aggressively, I don't even know the word, bought this property in a tax sale for $400,000. It was in the 400,000s, a property worth 2 million or more. Came in and he wanted to build condos. That was his plan. He said he would wait because it was when I spoke to him about the building, I said, "Do you know the history of this building?" He said, "No, and I'm not really interested because this corner is going to be in 10 years, it'll be one of the hottest corners." And his desire was to develop it. And once we figured that out, we went to City Hall and we had that building landmark. And we received a HRSA grant and we restored the entire building. It's beautiful. It took a lot of money and we also got locked into a 20-year lease. And so we at least, in the tragedy, because we didn't know when the building was lost, the owner didn't share it with us. We learned from this man, the new owner, walking in arrogantly and saying, "What's happening in here?" I didn't know what was happening in here. That's how we knew about it. So we fixed that. And at least we know that the building will forever, ever, ever honor Dr. Coleman, his work, and the other doctors. He had 11 specialists who committed to build with him, and they did that. Shortly after we redid the building, we had an event, and a couple of the doctors who were still living came, and it was so beautiful. I don't know if you have that picture, but I have somewhere I have a picture of one of the doctors standing next to the suite that we named after her. We named the suites after the original providers there, and it was such an honor for her. And so that was really, really emotional. I almost crying now, but I love that.
J-Mom, I feel like that is the work. That's that other part of the work. When you just got finished explaining about how when you get a midwife that looks like you, who understand you, that they would treat you a certain way because they know what you need. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like you knew what that building needed because you grew up in that building and that building took care of you and your family. And here you go, like 30, 40 years later, coming in to save the building. You know what I mean? And all that it meant to us as a people. I mean, his story was so amazing, but little did he know, because none of us really ever know, that somebody that he served as a patient will be so significant in saving the building years later. You know,
I was glad about that. And I guess what bothers me is that I even had to go through all of that. Like, that's what gets me heated, is like, that's the thing that we're always fighting. Like, somebody to say, oh, I don't care. First of all, I stole the building pretty much. I don't really care about the history. It means nothing to me. And, here's what I'm going to do about it. And that once that happened, it, it
it's on
was
and
like,
popping.
yeah, you beat me to it. So I think that's that thing that we can never really define. These aggressions to us, it's that.
Yeah.
Like, dude, what do you want me to do? Because you can't have the building. I mean, he have it, it's his, but you can't do what you wanted to do with it. And you're not gonna. That building was so important. In another video, the community came out and talked about that building, and it's just so important. And so I'm really happy that the building is still there. I'm no longer leading that clinic, so I'm praying that they will continue to do the work that is going to take to make sure that building survives.
Right on. Marin City, what was some of the history of the Marin City Clinic? Because that was another historically Black.
Yes.
Yes.
So Marin City, again, I just have been in these experiences where it's such a blessing to, like, an honor to carry on someone else's work. And so Marin City was really a clinic that was started by community leaders in Marin City. So let's talk about Marin City first of all. Okay. Marin is one of the richest counties in the country. Sausalito is there. The Golden Gate Bridge crosses to Marin.
Mm-hmm.
Marin is a county that is less than 3% Black. And to get to the less than 3%, the almost 3%, they include the prison population of San Quentin. So this is a very white, very rich county. There is a space in Marin called Marin City. It's an unincorporated area, and it's it's really beautiful, put in the back where the Black people live. So it's considered the Black community because that is where the largest public housing development is. And when I say largest, it's really small. I think it was less than 400 units, but Marin is a very rich county, so they don't have large public housing developments. So that's Marin City. And so just like with any other part of the country, after I just laid out, that narrative, if I just laid out that picture and said, this is the Black community, now we can talk about Marin City having the greatest disparities in life. Mm-hmm. Health is bad. Access to healthcare was bad. The school there is, the state had to come in and control the school because, it was considered the Black school. And even though it went to the 8th grade, when I was there, no child in the school had a reading level over a 3rd grade level. And they didn't even have the math scores in. It's just, the school. So education, struggling, housing, struggling, economy, struggling, no grocery store. That same national narrative that we have when we talk about poor Black communities. And so out of that, community leaders rose up, one of them being Terry Green, who's going to get something done. Like when she decided it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Ricardo Moncrief, Melvin Atkins or Malik Atkins, like a group. A group of them started a council and they forced Marin County to allow them to have a clinic in Marin City. Dr. Curtis Robinson came in and he did the work to turn their clinic into a federally qualified health center, which brought in a lot of resources and allowed us to grow the clinic to be to provide more than healthcare. So federally qualified health centers provide medical, dental, and behavioral health services. And under my leadership, we also had a school. We started a school and a freestanding birth center. So, you have unlimited opportunities when you can start to bring in resources, when you can start to tell your story, when you can start to have donors come. But that FQHC was a powerful piece, but it never would have happened if people from the community, activists from the community, hardworking people from the community did not stand and say, we are going to control our healthcare in Marin City. And yes, there's the clinic.
Yeah, yeah. So when you left Marin City, I know you came in, you built that birth center, the school. God, Javon, you one of them people like, so when you work in this system and like you're doing just healthcare, you really understand that there are so many things connected to healthcare. It's not just about you going to the doctors. It's about what you're eating at home. It's about what your environment. It's about how you're doing at school. It's about, everything. Like it's so connected. You know what I mean? And in our community, I think people be trying to provide us health care, but they don't know that we're those type of beings that everything is connected to the health outcome.
Right.
You
The
know?
health, the blood pressure part is such a small piece when you're dealing with the salt part, the diet part, the weight part, activity, when you're dealing with just mental health, just addressing depression so we can get you out. Like when we give you access to healthy food and water, when we take toxic things out the community, all of those things are such a large piece of the overall picture of health.
That's
Because
right.
we can give you a pill to control your blood pressure, but how do we prevent it? How do we stop you from taking the pill? How do we expand or prolong your lifespan? And how do we do that in a way where you can be happy, where you're just not a shell living, but you have a great quality of life? That's all healthcare. For example, I don't know what you were going to ask me,
No,
but
no, go ahead.
one of the things that the clinic did during the hurricanes was to step up and provide services during the hurricane, and that was challenged. A member of my board actually thought that wasn't, the best thing we could do. That wasn't healthcare, and I argued that point. Do you know that when people don't have access to food and shelter, this is healthcare?
Mm,
Right now, what do you think they need? This is healthcare.
mm, mm. But do you think that's because, Javon, people make so much money off of our defects and they don't want you to really use the resources to be better, to live up to the promise that was owed to our people?
I
Because
think
now
that's
there's been a
one.
whole system that has been created on your defect. And if you stood up straight, all of them would fall down.
I think that's one explanation. I think there are many. I think some people don't know how to create health. I think other people are afraid of challenging the system to talk about health. So
Mm,
they accept whatever comes. I think that when you start to talk about health in that broad of a way, it requires action. And some people are
mm,
not going to do it. If we talk about gardens, somebody have to build them. We struggle to create things in our community. In some of our communities, especially, I'm going to keep talking about my target population. We think somebody else is supposed to build things for us. And the thing is, we know it's not going to happen. How many years do you need before you know that it's not going to happen? Instead of waking up and knowing that the only time a community garden will come for you is when you build it yourself. So now you have to build it. And we have, I think it's a mental defect. Like, well, I'll do it, but somebody have to build it for us. Let me give you an example. I'm going to move back to Marin City. I went to a community meeting early. They had a shooting out there. And this was early in my time in Marin City. I went to a community meeting and they had invited the police and they were talking to the police and they were talking about grant this. And this was an actual conversation like, well, we're trying to write for a grant so that we can get some people to come back on the baseball field. We can, kind of revitalize it and get people to come back in so we can start a team on the baseball field. And I was so confused because I said, what if no one gives you a grant? Do the children just die? Like, who in the community is good at baseball? Like, get 7 fathers or mothers. I don't, get 7 people who are great at baseball and start some teams and go out there and play baseball. What do you mean if I can get a grant, then we'll do it? So the children don't deserve it. if there's nobody else doing it when we have the capability to do it? So when we look at healthcare, I can tell you all day why we sick. But at some point we have to realize we are sick, and other people are not trying to address the reasons why we're sick. So it becomes our responsibility to address it, because it's our lives that are affected. It's us that's going to live an unhealthy lifestyle, that's going to die sooner, that's going to suffer from diabetes, or it's us. If we have land, put a garden in there. If change the way you eat. Like, these are things that we could change. We could simplify a lot of things and live better, but it's us. And so, yes, there is a system, but nobody said we had to be a part of that part that's destroying us.
Right
We're
on.
choosing to do that. And so I don't want to simplify it to that, because there's a system and I fight that system every day. That system causes me to have to go to meetings and make sure that when resources are being divvied up or discussed at the table, that we get them too. Because if we're not at the table, we don't get them. So that's not an imaginary part. It's a part that needs work, but that's a part. And as long as people are at the table getting the resources, we need partnership with the community to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. And I know that's going to make me uncomfortable for a while, and it's going to require a lot of work, but I'm ready to do the work because I don't want to live like this no more. And nobody is giving me anything. Does that mean we're not entitled to nothing? No, we pay taxes. So we still going to be fighting for the taxes. But if it don't happen, how many years have we lived with disappointment? We gonna create, like, I'm gonna be healthy whether or not you gonna be healthy. You can't make me eat the stuff you send in the community, especially if I have a backyard. You can't make me eat it.
Right on, Jay.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't. We can talk to farmers just like other people can talk to farmers. We can have farmers markets in our community just like other people, but we have to show up. That's the thing. See, we want to be like, well, we don't have such and such. Well, if they come, you got to, one, come, and two, buy, so that they can keep coming, or they won't come. So I would say the larger part of our challenge is for us to get on board and to talk about it, like, all the time, no matter what environment you're in. You can't accept less because you're around white folks. You can't be like, I don't want to offend them, so I'm not going to tell the true story. You have to solve it in community. At some point, we have to solve it in community, but it requires us to be strong enough to talk about it and to address it all the time, no matter where we're at. And I've been around so many Black folks that are like, well, yeah, we have this issue, but it's not appropriate to bring it over here. Well, where is it? Where do I bring it? I'm a taxpayer.
Right on.
I'm alive. My ancestors are entitled to some things. I get to talk. Every time I come, I'm bringing Bernice Watkins with me, front and center.
Right on. Right on.
It is what it is. You know what I mean? So I think that we don't have to be, one, a part of a system that destroys us, and two, we can create our own systems, but we have to do it. We talk about, I get so frustrated with people who talk about that all the time. And then it's like, what are you going to do? Because I can go and I can fight for you, but what are you going to do when I leave the room and I didn't risk it all? My whole job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you going to do? So I get a little frustrated about that, because I know that our health is not, if we can free ourselves.
Right on.
We can free ourselves. And that's most of the battle, is freeing once we free ourselves, we don't even think like that no more.
That's real talk. That's real talk, Jay. I'm right there with you. When you was talking, I was thinking of Sister Harriet Tubman. Imagine if she had waited for someone to come free her.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And we can free ourselves. So think of how much easier it is to free ourselves than it was for Harriet Tubman.
That's so true.
We can wake up tomorrow and say, we don't eat that no more.
That's the end of that. That's so true. So hold on. So as we come around this bend, I have to show a clip from SWLA. So I'm going back to the clip, Jay.
Okay,
hold on.
Let's see which one this is. This is so interesting. Oh. you find this?
Online.
So this is our hurricane relief line.
And here you're in Louisiana.
Yeah. And this is we gave away 55,000 boxes of things to help the community, and we fed over 18,000 hot meals during our hurricane.
If we prioritize the healthcare of poor people and poor communities in the way that we prioritized COVID, if we make that a national agenda that we must make people well, then we will be doing fine.
So our core mission is to take care of the community. We're a federally qualified health center, and so that means we take care of our target population, people on Medicaid. So here we are.
So Jay,
North Lake Charles.
so Jaymon, so tell me about going from California to Louisiana and working still in Black communities. What was the similarities and what was different?
Mm-hmm. So what was different and what was exciting and why I took the job? Let me start with that. Okay. So when the recruiters called me, so recruiters would always call me to tell me about a job, and it would be like LA or someplace. And I don't want to go those places, right? I'm country in my heart. I just don't know how to do it, but I feel it. And so one time the recruiters called me and told me about this job in LA. And I said, listen, if I don't want to work there, but if you find a job in the Midwest or in the South, call me back and I would think about that. But stop calling me about these jobs. These people called me back in 3 weeks and they said, I have something that might work for you. And then they told me about Lake Charles. I said, Lake Charles? Well, I know where Lake Charles is from the road trip. Like we drive through 10 and, we passed through. We never in our lives stopped in Lake Charles, right? We New Orleans, Baton Rouge people drive straight through Houston. So, I thought, I don't know about this. If he said New Orleans, I'm packing it up right now. But, Lake Charles. So I researched and learned some amazing things about the clinic. Like the beginnings of the clinic, a lot like Marin City Health and Wellness Center. There were two gentlemen who 40 years ago risked it all, a young attorney and a young chemist, before they were who they are today, risked it all and fought for a clinic on the north side of Lake Charles. Now, when I say fight for a clinic, it's a little different in the South, in the deep South. Louisiana is considered the deep South. 12 years a slave have some roots in Louisiana, right? Like I'm talking about the deep South, not the West Coast. So when I say fought and risked it all, the fight look a little bit different, right? I just want to point that out. And so they were successful in bringing a clinic to the north side. The community was blighted, food desert, same narrative that I said with Marin City Health and Wellness Center, except the poverty looks a little different. West Coast poverty looks a little different than Southern poverty and then rural poverty, right? So you might be in a project versus a shotgun house, in bad condition. So it looks a little different. So I start following life, particularly of Judge Jean Thibodeau, who, forever be a person that I'm just inspired by, like his career and his life and working with him. I would say he was on the board as an emeritus. So I started looking at his work and I was like, I might be able to do this because Rolanda, I think, you would be one of the people that know that before I go do something, I have to make sure that I can risk my, career to fight for something that's meaningful. Like I'm a go, but I got to make sure I'm going on some real stuff, and especially not being from the South. And so I did. I interviewed with Judge Thibodeau, who did not like me in the beginning. It was very But when I got the job, I ended up getting the job. But when I got the job, the first encounter I had with him, he said, you weren't my first choice, my second choice, or my third choice. But I know how to admit when I'm wrong. And I was like, I think that means that he likes me, but I'm not sure. But you know what I mean? It was so important to me because I felt like I'm going to be working to continue this man's work. And I'm sorry, I haven't said the other gentleman's name. His name is Milton Bellard. Also, equally um, brilliant and still in the community. I was able to do some things with him too. So, but Judge Jean Thibodeau was still on the board. And so I got to spend my time, to me, next to a person who had done this work. It was so meaningful. And so I think that this clinic was much larger. We have 5 sites, and we had sites from Lake Charles to 1.5 hours away from Lake Charles. And in between, we had rural sites. So I got my first real taste at leading rural clinics and what's the difference with rural medicine. A lot of diabetes, a lot of hypertension, a lot of insight into lifestyle diseases. Was different. It was very different. The diet, not that we have a great diet, it's just a different diet that was also not great for our health. And so I learned a lot in Louisiana. I bought a farm while I was in Louisiana. It's been a goal of mine ever since joining the Nation of Islam, and learning, like, you got to get a piece of this land for yourself. You got to control what you eat. It was so important to me. So I went to Louisiana and I bought a farm. I still have that farm. This sister right here, Jessica Jolly, is one of the most brilliant Black women I've met to this day. She's a young sister. When I left, she went on to work at a Dallas FQHC. When I tell you that she brings it, I don't know what she's going to accomplish in her life because she's just so brilliant. But the first thing I did when I got the job was to hire her. And I didn't know her. I met her through LinkedIn, and I was recruiting for a COO. The best thing I did. This sister is so smart. So when we first got there, this magazine, The Voice, did an article about our leadership. Neither one of us was from Louisiana. So Jessica is from Detroit, and I'm of course from San Francisco. So we made a lot of changes. I think we did a lot of good things. We brought a community garden to Louisiana. We had a food truck program where they had to bring something healthy, and we would let them come to the clinic. We opened up a site inside of Sewella in a community college. One of the things that I had to do that was difficult was to bring, like, put my money where my mouth was. And so again, it was a very we had some very unhealthy practices in the clinic. And so they didn't love me for it, but we got rid of vending machines. We brought in healthier markets in the lunch room, out of parades in Louisiana, especially around Mardi Gras. So we would be in several parades a year where we would throw candy off of our float. I stopped that. We started throwing other healthier things or non-food products at all off of our float. So we started to bring in a healthier culture in the clinic, and that enabled us to bring in some healthier programming. We became a certified diabetes educational site. We had some really phenomenal diabetes programs. We have a nurse practitioner there named Miss Lillian Browning. Just dope. I had some of the dopest providers there, just brilliant people. And so she is a diabetes expert, and she did a lot of programming. We did really great work at SWLA. And I bought a farm.
Right on. So was there any similarities between Marin City and, say, Louisiana?
Yeah, we are the same people everywhere. We just have some different ways that we show it, right? Like, so, country people, we both all desire to be in family and community and groups. We all know how to party. We strive to celebrate ourselves. We have some of the same battles, like, struggles. In the Bay Area, let me just give you a concrete example. In the Bay Area, we're fighting to make sure our school is educating the Black children, equally. In Louisiana, while I was there, I participated in a protest against a Confederate statue. And the other side that showed up to save the Confederate statue, many of them showed up with guns and dressed in Confederate clothing or fatigue clothing, a very intimidating type of display. And so that's something we wouldn't see in San Francisco that we saw there, but same fight, same
Right.
fight. You know what I mean? Different theaters. Let me just say that. Same fight.
Back to San Francisco.
Okay. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
How did you go from Louisiana back to San Francisco?
Well, I resigned from SWLA, and I resigned because I felt like um my work just wasn't I approach things from a Black lens, especially when it's predominantly Black. But Rolanda, one of the things that you know about me and anybody who's ever worked with me is that I give justice to all people. So just because you get Black leadership doesn't mean anybody's mistreated.
Yeah.
It actually means you get treated better, because it's a fact that when Black people get justice, we give it. When we have resources, we give it. But the squeaky wheel for me was in addressing the disparities in outcomes for Black people, because that's where the disparity was. That's where the economic disparity was, the health, the educational, all the disparities were there. So I had a real clear focus on creating programs that kind of healed Black people so that we could join the community. Because until we're healed, this whole equity and equality conversation is BS. Because as long as we think that we don't have resources and other people have them, then we will be crippled to these people. We will always be trying to make relationship with the other communities to fill our void. And so, I'm always trying to make sure that we are level, because if we level, we can compete. We always have shown if we're level, we can compete. And so, I was told many things in Louisiana, that I was pro-Black, which is crazy because I am Black. So I don't know how to be pro-Black, that I was too Black, that, I focused on the Black agenda, how do the white people feel? And, all of that foolishness. And it really was foolish. My thing is, I'm not a code switcher, because I worked my whole career, all the things that you're talking about, I worked really hard not to have to code switch. I am who I am all the time. And that's, and like I said, I give justice to everybody all the time. But my work is a little different, because my work caters to those, and my work has an equitable lens. So in the true sense of equity, I'm going to create for those who need the help. I'm going to honor the mission of the people who came before me and created and built. I'm going to expand off of their work. And so that was challenging for people. It was challenging for some people for me to not cater to white folks. Like, for example, because it's hard to explain that when I'm out of it, I'm not in it anymore. When I created the Juneteenth, 7 days of Juneteenth, I mean, we celebrated, and Black people felt so good about it. And it's a Black holiday, if I can say holiday, right? They canceled that and said, it's too, I don't know what the word was that they said. Oh, it's not inclusive enough. And I was so confused, because it's Juneteenth. I mean, I go to St. Patrick's Day parades or events, some green beer event. So are you telling me that they're inclusive enough? Like, it's an Irish holiday and everybody can come. But we don't ever see our things that worthy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a Black holiday, but anybody can come. And I designed it so that it could be super Black, but anybody can come. For example, we closed it out with fireworks on Lake Charles. Anybody can come see the fireworks and enjoy. Anybody can celebrate us that time. But we're worthy of being celebrated, because all year long and for our entire time here, we have celebrated everybody else. But somehow it becomes a problem when we say we doing it big. It's different. I mean, they used to have a week or 2 week long pirate festival in Lake Charles. let me not even get into pirates and what that mean and what they did, but y'all all went and celebrated that.
Wow, Jay.
So, those type of things made it difficult for me because, people just didn't know what they called me borderline racist and all kind of the foolishness that's not true.
Wow. Well, we know that's not true, but I also think people sometimes white supremacy don't always show up as white people, and the supporters of white supremacy don't always show up as white people. Sometimes they show up looking like us. So that's a hard conversation to have. But Javon, when you got to Rams,
Uh-huh.
what is Rams, and how did you get to be the CEO of Rams?
It's incredible. So Rams is the Richmond Area Multi Services, and it was established in the early 1970s. And it was established to provide mental health services to primarily Asian Americans and Asian immigrants, not only Asian Americans, but Asian Americans and Asian immigrants. And it expanded to the Asian and Pacific Islander community, and then it expanded to the Asian Pacific Islander and Russian community. And that was just because there was a growing Russian population. So initially, Rams wanted to be able to provide culturally appropriate care for Asians. Like that meant in languages, and many Asians speak many languages, right? We want to make sure we have people who can speak the languages of the people who need to be served. Then it grew just out of a need to the Russians. And today it is still, we still have a lot of focus on the Asian community because that's the roots, but it's diversified a lot. And so with some of our program has caused it to be a little bit more diverse. But Rams, it comes out of a desire to serve the Asian community. And just like the stories I told you about the Marin City Health and Wellness Center, SWLA, the Arthur Coleman Center, it was the same thing. Like Asian activists got together and said, we need to make sure that our people can have the mental health services in their language. In the Asian communities, mental health is also is taboo, just like in our communities. It's not that. In fact, in a video that I just watched that we produced, I heard a Chinese peer worker say, in the Chinese language, she never even knew a word for mental health. So, we were battling some of the same thing. Like we want to have culturally appropriate care, but this was the Asian community doing that. So, good question. How did I get here? Because I am the first Black person to serve as CEO of RAM. So it's a growth period for them. It's something very different. They have not had a Black CEO. So in the last decade or a little bit more than decade, the work has changed and expanded, and the world has changed and expanded. So for example, we service, we have a lot of partnerships with the city and county. So if someone receives benefits here, CalWorks, General Assistance, they usually come into contact with a RAMS employee. More recently, the Street Crisis Response Team, which is an innovative way that San Francisco is responding to mental health calls and trying to keep the police from responding to mental health calls. We're a part of that team. We're now a part of the Street Overdose Response Team. So all of these different programs have caused RAMS to diversify. And so now, today, RAMS serves about 42% of the population that we serve are Asian. And then we serve, everyone else. And so it's a big shift for RAMS, but still very Asian focused. We just left out of strategic planning. We just ended strategic planning. And that was a huge conversation for us, whether or not we left Asian in the mission as we moved forward with this kind of expanded reality. And I fought for that. I fought to see Asian be left in the mission in the same way I fought in Marin City to change our mission to African American health equity. And to me, that was important because of the roots, because of the people who came before us, because of the desire, because of the work we do. We still speak many, 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 many languages at RAMS. We still provide cultural services that really help the immigrant and the Asian community. And I don't think that they should water that down. I think that they should continue to do that. I think that, and I've learned so much in the last year about immigrant challenges, because to be honest, when I started, so growing up in my community, basically we kind of had a, like maybe a stereotype, like, but we thought Chinese people were all right. They don't need nothing from us. Their community is fine. They got money over there. They don't really do us. You know what I mean? Like, it's a separation. Um, and in the last year, I've learned a lot about domestic violence and immigrant challenges and how it feels to be dropped here and not be able to, speak the language, and just different things that I think that they should be able to continue to do. But we're also doing a lot of great work to expand. And, you know, so we're trying to do a lot of outreach in the Tenderloin and address the opioid crisis and the homeless issue. And those issues really affect Black people disproportionately. Like, Blacks are 5% or less of the population today in San Francisco, which is just unacceptable and horrible, but that's another issue. But we're 7 times more likely to be homeless. We're 40% of that population out on the streets. And so, being in this position, it also allows me to do that work, especially with the street crisis response team and the street opioid response team. So it gives me the opportunity to do the work I love, but then making sure people get what they need is the work I love. And so when I was considering whether or not I would take this position, because I also had to think to myself, what does that mean to you? Like, never in your life have you done something like this. I said, this is what I do.
Wow.
This is what I do.
Right. Javon, so now that you're over ramps, how did y'all deal when they had the whole Stop Asian Hate thing, and then what was happening with Black people? How did y'all deal with that?
So we had a lot of events. We did 30 days of API history, because in March is API History Month. And so we had lots of conversations between Blacks and others and Asians. We also, did some internal things to talk about, hey, we participated in some community things. But one of the things that I'm very hopeful about, because those are all very surface things. They don't get to really like the issues that we have between communities, because there are some real issues that Black folks have when it comes to dealing with Asians, the Asian community. And there's some issues that they clearly have with us, because, we all know how we get treated in beauty supplies. We all know how we get treated in nail shops. Like, those are real conversations that we have in our community that we really have to dig into. It's one thing to have a rally, another thing to say, we support, because, that's just kind of like advocacy work. But we got to get into policy work. I have an amazing board president. I really like my board president, and I like her work. And she is a small business commissioner. And when her and I were talking about this, we talked about things that could be concrete policy. Like, for example, when you come to get a nail license, to license your nail shop, you have to go through a cultural competency program where you learn about Black folks, because you might be an immigrant coming in and you don't know how to deal with us. So you got to learn about us. Like, here's all the stuff you don't get to do, and here's why you might think a certain way about us. So talking about that, but also working with one of your programs. I'm really hopeful that the road trip may be a program that brings us real addressing, because I'm really into the real addressing of respect, right? I think we have to bring young people together from both communities, and we have to share. Here's some stuff you did, but here's some stuff I did. You could be great, but I'm great. I think that's how you build respect. And then we put people together where they develop real friendships and respect, and then they go back to their communities and they can have a different experience. But the experience is not based on one-sidedness. Is on the respect for both communities, the contributions for both communities. A lot of times I think, I know when immigrants come here, they don't know any of the wonderful things our ancestors did. They know what they learned on TV. They know to stay away from us. They learn a disrespect for us. They treat us like we're not people because they don't know us. And we have to start, if we're going to talk about respect, we have to be able to demonstrate, and it's not that it's a burden, you know what I mean? We have to show, though, that, like, no, this is who we are. And a lot of the benefits that you're going to get is because of Bernice. This is, I got to tell you some things. And then you share with me what you did. I've learned many things, particularly about the Chinese community that I didn't know. I learned some things about how Chinese people contributed to the civil rights movement, and I didn't know. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that we both have to learn. I think, in this new world we're creating moving forward, that's what it's going to be all about, is respect, honor, and knowing. Because if you look at both communities, we really only learn about white folks. That's what we have in common. We learn about white folks. And because of I can't think of the word, the model minority foolishness that, that Asians are the model minority, that competition to be connected to the white folks and white supremacy puts us in a position of disadvantage. And so we've done some work, but I'm looking to do some more meaningful work, because that's what we have to do. Some meaningful, so that we have to start bringing young people up to not continue this foolishness on both sides. One of the things I want to say is, when I saw the pictures that they had of Black people beating up elders, that was very offensive to me, because that's not who we are. Like, we just ain't never been that people to put our hands on elders. And so I was put off by seeing images of Black people attach elders. And that's how I know we have a lot more work to do. About us, not us and other people. Like, I'm not making this be about us and other people, about us. When did that happen? I looked up at you, I said, I ain't never known young people. We do some crazy stuff, myself included, but put our hands on an elder of any other race? That's not us. No. So where did that come from? That's rhetorical, come as a
No, I get that.
And we gotta break away and address that. We can't have that no more, especially if we want to be part of the human family and be respected. And we want to get respect. We gotta give respect. And I've always known us, that's that crack cocaine though. That's that crack cocaine divide. Because I've always known us to be respectful in those areas.
So Javon, first of all, thank you for talking with me today on this day of the interview. But the next
MLK Day,
I know, the next 50 years of your life, what Javon gonna be doing?
Well, I want to manifest the core belief system that I have. So let me just say this. Okay. It's a different world right now. It's a different time right now. And I think COVID was a defining moment for us. Not the end of the world in the way we think of it, but COVID ended a lot of the things that we called normal, right? And COVID has some concerns for me moving forward, the way that we addressed it, the possible limitations on resources, also some of the things that they have planned. I've been reading and watching a lot of things, learning about, an idea to put vaccine in food. A lot of things that they want to do with food that's not healthy, a Band-Aid vaccine, like all of these things that I'm looking at that affect health have really encouraged me to go back to basics. And so at some point, I'd like to go and develop my farm. I'd like to feed myself the things that I grow. I'd like to simplify things and keep doing that work. I like to continue to make people healthy, continue to, do some type of birth work, not necessarily midwifery, to create healthy items, but to do it from a place where I am more sustainable without a system. That's what I'm thinking about.
Well, Jay, thank you so much for joining me today. It is always a pleasure and an honor to talk to you. We covered a lot of stuff, but I thank you so much in giving me your time to talk with me about such awesome work that you do. So I thank you so
for
much.
Recognizing my work. It just, like I said, it's so funny because all of those things happened in the blink of an eye, and then something else happened and then you don't really get to reflect on them. I really loved seeing the videos, and I'm really glad. Thank you so much for honoring me in this way, because I think the same way about you. Like, I could do this whole session on you. I feel like, since meeting you, you've been such an asset to my life, and then your work is so valuable to the community and to everybody you touch. So I could do the same show, and speak about you, because I some of my work is, valuable because of your work. I feel like we've bounced so many things off of each other. And so thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's something about that 1971. I don't care what nobody says.
You know what I mean?
Y'all, I will see y'all, Javon, don't hang up. Y'all will see y'all next week. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care.
Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.